The ground beneath Metro Manila has not moved in 368 years. That silence is not a sign of safety. It is a countdown. Right now, 25 million people are living, sleeping, and working directly on top of a fault line that scientists say is not just capable of a catastrophic rupture, it is overdue for one. The West Valley Fault is loaded, locked, and building pressure with every single day that passes. Geologists are no longer asking if it will break. They are asking what happens to the most densely populated metropolitan area in Asia when it finally does. March 1st, 2026. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, known as PIVOLCS, releases its latest ground deformation data for the West Valley Fault system. The numbers land on the desks of seismologists across Southeast Asia like a warning shot. Accumulated strain along the fault has continued its relentless buildup. No significant release has occurred. The compression is not easing. It is concentrating. The West Valley Fault does not sit safely in a remote mountain range or on an uninhabited stretch of coastline. It cuts directly through the heart of the Philippine capital, running approximately 100 kilometers from the municipality of San Mateo in Rizal in the north, slicing south through the cities of Marikina, Pasig, Makati, Muntinlupa, and continuing into Cavite province. This fault is not a geological abstraction. It is a loaded weapon buried beneath schools, hospitals, shopping malls, bridges, and the homes of tens of millions of people. PIVOLCS classifies the West Valley Fault as a verifiable, active fault. That classification carries a precise scientific meaning. A fault is considered active if it has produced a surface rupture within the last 10,000 years. The West Valley Fault does not simply qualify. It ruptured as recently as 1658. By geological standards, that is practically yesterday. By human standards, it is 368 years of silence that has allowed one of the world's megacities to grow directly on top of a tectonic time bomb. Dr. Ishmael Narog, former director of PIVOLCS, has described the situation plainly in scientific briefings. The West Valley Fault is capable of generating a magnitude 7.2 earthquake. That figure is not a worst-case projection from a computer model. It is a baseline estimate derived from the fault's dimensions, its slip rate, and the accumulated strain that has been building since its last major rupture. The energy stored in this fault is not theoretical, it is measurable, it is real, and it has nowhere to go except through the city above it. The fault runs through zones that urban planners in any other seismically aware nation would have designated as permanent exclusion areas. Instead, Metro Manila expanded across it for generations. Infrastructure was built on it. Communities grew over it. And the clock kept ticking. This is what has seismologists in complete about the alarm. The West Valley Fault does not rupture frequently. It ruptures on a recurrence interval estimated between 200 and 400 years. That long, quiet period is precisely what makes it so dangerous. Long recurrence intervals create a phenomenon that earthquake scientists call seismic gap accumulation. Every year that passes without a rupture is another year of tectonic stress loading onto the fault. The Philippine sea plate is moving northwest at approximately 7 centimeters per year, grinding against the Eurasian plate. That motion does not stop. It does not pause. It transfers into the crust and it stays there, stored as elastic strain energy in the rock, building and building until the fault can no longer hold. The last confirmed major rupture of the West Valley Fault occurred in 1658. Historical records from that period describe widespread destruction across the Manila region. Entire communities were displaced. Buildings constructed by Spanish colonial administrators collapsed. The landscape itself was visibly altered. That event released centuries of accumulated energy in what would have taken approximately 2 minutes of violent ground shaking. Then, The clock reset. And now, 368 years later, that clock has not stopped. Seismologists at the National Institute of Geological Sciences at the University of the Philippines have analyzed the fault's behavior across multiple rupture cycles. Their findings do not offer reassurance. The fault has already exceeded the lower bound of its estimated recurrence interval. It is deep inside the window, during which rupture becomes statistically probable with each passing year. Dr. Carlos Primo David, a leading geoscientist, formerly with the University of the Philippines, has stated publicly what many in the scientific community have long understood. The West Valley Fault will rupture again. The only variable is timing. And the longer it waits, the more energy has accumulated. The more energy accumulated, the more violent the eventual release in 368 years of pressure. The math is not comforting. But here is what has Philippine geologists in complete panic. The data coming out of monitoring stations positioned along the fault in early 2026 is showing something that demands immediate attention. Ground deformation surveys using satellite-based interferometric synthetic aperture radar, called INSAR technology, are detecting subtle but measurable surface movements along specific segments of the West Valley Fault. The eastern wall of the fault, running through Marikina and Pasig, is displaying differential movement patterns that indicate the fault is not uniformly locked. Sections are creeping, and creeping faults behave in one of two ways. They either release strain gradually and safely, or they accelerate into locked sections, where energy concentrates until catastrophic failure occurs. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology monitoring stations record an average of 100 to 150 minor seismic events per month within the fault's influence zone. Most register below magnitude 2.0. They are unfelt by residents, but seismologists do not dismiss them. These micro-seismic events are the fault system talking. They indicate active stress redistribution within the crust. They are the sounds of a geological system under strain. Dr. Renato Solidum Jr., Undersecretary of the Department of Science and Technology and former director of the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, addressed the scientific community's ongoing concern during government briefings in late 2025. The West Valley Fault remains our highest priority seismic hazard. Its proximity to Metro Manila's critical infrastructure, combined with its long recurrence interval and confirmed activity, places it in a category that demands constant surveillance and sustained public preparedness. The Marikina Valley, which sits directly along the fault trace, has seen ground deformation measurements that show the valley floor has been slowly sinking on one side, while the opposite wall shows relative uplift. This differential movement is not new. It has been occurring for decades, but current rates show no signs of decreasing, and the strain is not being relieved. The strain is concentrating. International researchers have joined the analysis. The United States Geological Survey has shared modeling data with PHIVO-LCS, the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology. Japanese seismologists from the National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Resilience have provided comparative analysis, drawing from their experience monitoring similarly dangerous urban fault systems beneath Tokyo and Osaka. The consensus that emerges from international consultation is consistent and deeply sobering. The West Valley Fault represents one of the highest consequence seismic risks on the planet, not because it is the most active fault in the Philippines, but because of what sits directly above it. To understand what a West Valley Fault rupture means in the year 2026, it is necessary to understand what it meant in 1658. The historical record from that event is fragmentary. Spanish colonial documents describe violent ground shaking across the Manila region, lasting approximately 2 minutes. Rivers changed course. Land near the Marikina River subsided. Structures throughout the colonial settlement were destroyed or severely damaged. The population of the Manila region at that time numbered in the tens of thousands. The fault left a visible scar on the landscape. Surface rupture traces from the 1658 event have been mapped by geologists studying exposed fault scarps in Marikina. These scarps, vertical offsets in the ground surface that mark where one side of the fault moved relative to the other, show displacements of several meters. In some locations, the fault scarp rises 3 to 4 meters above the surrounding terrain. That vertical displacement occurred in seconds during the rupture event. Trenching studies conducted by FIVOLX and academic researchers have exposed the subsurface evidence of multiple prehistoric rupture events preserved in the soil layers beneath the Mariquina Valley. The stratigraphic record confirms what the recurrence interval calculations suggest. The West Valley Fault has ruptured catastrophically multiple times across thousands of years. Each event left its mark in the earth. Each event was followed by centuries of silence, and each silence ended in violent rupture. The 1658 event occurred when Manila had a population that could evacuate on foot across open landscape. What comes next will occur when 25 million people occupy every square meter of the fault's influence zone. The comparison is not just sobering. It is the defining difference between a historical disaster and an unimaginable modern catastrophe. The FIVOLCS Metro Manila Earthquake Impact Reduction Study, known as MEIRS, produced findings that emergency planners describe in hushed voices. The study modeled a magnitude 7.2 rupture of the West Valley Fault during daytime hours. The results were staggering: 34,000 people killed, over 114,000 injured, over 1 million structures damaged, 18,000 fires igniting simultaneously from ruptured gas lines, overturned cooking equipment, and electrical failures. And here is the number that makes structural engineers go pale. Those projections were generated using population and infrastructure data from 2004. The Metro Manila of 2026 is a fundamentally different beast. Denser, taller, more interconnected, more dependent on infrastructure that will fail. The fault runs directly beneath or within close proximity to some of the most critical infrastructure in the Philippine capital. The Mariquina Infanta Highway crosses the fault trace. Major water pipelines serving millions of households run parallel to the fault corridor. The metro rail transit systems, which move hundreds of thousands of commuters daily, have stations and elevated track segments within the fault's projected surface rupture zone. Liquefaction presents a catastrophic secondary threat. Large sections of Metro Manila were built on reclaimed land, river sediment, and poorly consolidated fill material. When a major earthquake strikes, these soils behave like liquid. Buildings do not just crack, they sink, they tilt, they collapse into the ground beneath them. The Bay Areas of Manila, the reclaimed districts of Pasay and Paranaque, the river delta areas near the Pasig River, all are classified as extreme liquefaction hazard zones. The Mariquina River amplification effect adds another layer of terror. Soft alluvial sediments filling the Mariquina Valley act as a natural amplifier for seismic waves. Ground motion in the valley floor during a major rupture will be significantly stronger than on bedrock sites. Buildings designed to withstand a certain ground acceleration will experience forces that exceed their design specifications simply because of the geology beneath their foundations. Unreinforced masonry structures, the kind that fill older residential neighborhoods across the fault corridor, will not survive a magnitude 7.2 event. Structural engineers who have surveyed the building stock in Marikina, Pasig, and Makati estimate that tens of thousands of buildings lack the lateral force resistance required to remain standing through the shaking duration of a major West Valley Fault rupture. Elena Santos is 53 years old. She was born in Marikina City and has spent her entire life in a two-story concrete blockhouse 40 meters from the mapped West Valley Fault trace. She knows the fault is there. A FIVOLCS marker stands on the road at the edge of her barangay. But the house was built by her parents. It is paid for. Her children grew up inside it. And moving is not a choice that a family earning 12,000 pesos a month can make. Her situation is not exceptional. It is the rule. The 15-meter setback requirement established by Philippine law for structures built along active fault traces was implemented too late for the communities that already exist within that zone. Hundreds of thousands of families live inside the mapped fault corridor. They are not there because they are unaware of the danger. Many of them are fully aware. They are there because the economics of Metro Manila have left them no alternative. Roberto de la Cruz, 41, drives a tricycle in Pasig City. His route crosses the fault trace 17 times each day. When asked about the big one, the term Filipinos use for the anticipated West Valley Fault rupture, he answers without hesitation. We know it is coming. We just do not know when. You cannot stop living because of what might happen. Emergency shelter capacity across Metro Manila can accommodate approximately 1 million displaced persons. MEIRS projects over 600,000 households damaged or destroyed in a daytime rupture scenario. The gap between what the disaster will produce and what the response system can absorb is not a planning challenge. It is a humanitarian crisis waiting to be born. Healthcare infrastructure sits squarely within the fault impact zone. The Philippine General Hospital, the largest government hospital in the country, stands in an area that liquefaction models classify as moderate to high hazard. The moment the fault ruptures, the facilities that survivors will desperately need will themselves require assessment for structural integrity before they can receive patients. The Philippine government has not been passive in the face of this threat. Republic Act 10,121, the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act, established frameworks for hazard assessment and community preparedness that have been applied specifically to the West Valley Fault Corridor. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council conducts annual earthquake drills that mobilize millions of Filipinos in the practiced response of drop, cover, and hold on. In 2022, the government formalized the West Valley Fault Safety Zone policies, strengthening enforcement of the 15-meter building exclusion zone along the mapped fault trace. New construction within the hazard corridor requires geological assessment and engineering review. Existing informal settlements within the zone are subject to ongoing relocation programs funded through national housing agencies. The Metro Manila Shake Drill, conducted every second Thursday of July, is the largest simultaneous earthquake drill in Asia. Participation reaches into the tens of millions. Businesses, schools, government offices, and households across the capital stop what they are doing and practice survival procedures in the 30-second window that scientists estimate residents will have between the first shaking and full ground motion intensity. But preparedness exercises and policy frameworks collide with a fundamental reality. Metro Manila has grown faster than any government program can manage. Informal settlements continue to expand into hazard zones. Building code enforcement is inconsistent across the 17 cities and municipalities that compose the metropolitan region. The 15-meter setback zone, while legally established, exists in a metropolitan area where land is so scarce and demand so overwhelming that compliance is perpetually contested. The Commission on Higher Education has required earthquake engineering modules in civil engineering programs. FIVO-LCS has published fault trace maps with sufficient resolution for municipal-level land use planning. The data exists. The legal frameworks exist. The challenge is implementation at the scale and speed that a metropolitan area of 25 million people demands. But here is what has disaster risk analysts in complete panic. The West Valley Fault does not operate in isolation. The Philippine archipelago sits at the intersection of the Pacific Ring of Fire and the Eurasian Plate boundary, making it one of the most seismically complex territories on Earth. The West Valley Fault is the most dangerous urban fault in the Philippines. It is not the only one. The East Valley Fault runs parallel to the west segment, approximately 5 kilometers to the east, passing through the same Marikina Valley corridor. Seismologists have documented evidence of sympathetic triggering between parallel fault systems following major rupture events. A West Valley Fault rupture does not guarantee East Valley Fault activation, and it does not preclude it. The Marikina Valley sits above an interconnected network of subsurface drainage systems. When a magnitude 7.2 earthquake saturates those drainage pathways with liquefied soil and collapsed infrastructure, the Marikina River's flood management capacity collapses simultaneously. The river, which already poses regular flood threats to downstream communities, will receive an extraordinary sediment load from slope failures across the valley walls. Communities along the Pasig River, which the Marikina feeds, face compounded flood risk in the days and weeks following the initial rupture. Fire is the multiplier that transforms an earthquake disaster into a civilizational event. The MEIRS projection of 18,000 simultaneous fire ignitions is not the worst-case scenario. It is the baseline estimate. A major earthquake striking during dry season months, when northeast monsoon winds are channeling across the metropolitan area, creates conditions for conflagration that Metro Manila's fire suppression infrastructure cannot contain. Water pressure drops the moment distribution pipelines rupture. Fire trucks cannot navigate streets blocked by collapsed buildings and liquefied road surfaces. The fires that Tokyo's Great Earthquake of 1923 are remembered for were not the product of geology alone. They were the product of what a city built too densely on vulnerable ground does when it shakes. Telecommunications infrastructure will fail within seconds of major shaking. Cell towers built on soft ground will topple or lose power. The fiber optic cables that carry internet and telephone traffic across the metropolitan area cross the fault trace in hundreds of locations. Command and coordination between emergency response agencies will depend on radio communications and physical liaison in the immediate aftermath, a reality that emergency planners describe as returning the most digitally connected metropolitan area in Southeast Asia to the communications capacity of the 1950s. March 1, 2026. 368 years since the last confirmed major rupture of the West Valley Fault. The fault is loaded. The science is unambiguous. The city above it is the most densely populated in Asia. Every year that passes without rupture is another year of accumulated strain. Every building constructed within the hazard corridor is another variable in the disaster equation. Every family that cannot afford to relocate is another set of lives depending on warning systems, preparedness drills, and the structural integrity of buildings designed for a shaking event that has not yet come. The question that haunts every FIVOLC seismologist, every Metro Manila emergency manager, every structural engineer who has surveyed the fault corridor is the same question that haunted scientists watching Campi Flegrei inflate, watching Mayon's sulfur dioxide readings climb, watching Big Sur hillside saturate past every safety threshold. Not if, when. The West Valley Fault will rupture again. The geological record leaves no ambiguity on this point. 368 years of silence does not mean 368 years of safety. It means 368 years of loading, 368 years of compression, 368 years of a fault system drawing back like a fist before it swings. 25 million people live in its path. The drills continue. The monitoring stations record their data. The fault markers stand at the edges of barangays where families have lived for generations. And beneath all of it, 3 kilometers down in the rock of the Philippine archipelago, the accumulated energy of nearly 4 centuries of tectonic pressure waits for the moment when the friction holding it in place finally gives way. The countdown has been running since 1658. Nobody knows what number it is on. The only certainty is that it has not reached zero yet, and when it does, Metro Manila will never be the same again.